There's a lot of information on the web about Islam. A lot of accusations get made against Islam that it's an inherently violent religion. And what I want to do with you is explore this accusation and explore also a little bit of what mimetic theory might bring to the table when it comes to Islam. So, first, Islam and violence. The key source for understanding Islam is the Quran. Interestingly enough, there are 114 chapters. They're called surahs. There are 114 surahs in the Quran. 113 of them start off with something like, in the name of God, the all-merciful, the all-compassionate. Or it'll say, the giver of mercy, the Lord of mercy. The Quran is the way for a Muslim to understand who God is at an essential level. And there's this repetition in the Quran of forgiveness, of mercy, of compassion. This is who God is at a fundamental level. This is the lens through which a Muslim reads the Quran at the beginning of every chapter. Mercy, forgiveness, compassion. This is it. Now, the question is there violence in the Quran? Yes, there is violence in the Quran. There is violence in most religious texts. There's violence in the Bible. The question is, does the Quran critique violence? And when is it okay to use violence? This is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Take Surah number 2. Surah number 2 is a great kind of introduction to the whole Quran. It's right in the beginning. It goes over most of the themes of the Quran. It's a great place to start. Surah number 2, verse 216 says this: "Fighting is ordained for you, though you do not like it." So what the Quran is saying is that if you like fighting, if you like war, there's something wrong with you. This is not something that you do for fun. This is not something that we do as a game. This is something that you take very seriously. And when you go to war, it's kind of a loss. It means you've failed. It's a failure when you go to war because you hate to do it. But there are some times the Quran says that you have to do the things that you hate to do. When is war and violence ordained for you? That's the question. And it's answered in the second chapter. In verse 190, it says, "Fight when you are being persecuted. But if the other stops fighting, you have to stop as well." So if somebody is persecuting, and in the Quran it's generally tied to religious persecution. It's not tied to economic persecution. It's not tied to political persecution. This is when a group of people is coming against you and saying you can't worship the way that you want to worship. It's tied with religious persecution. When that happens, you have a duty and obligation to defend yourself, to defend the religion. Now, this brings me to the topic of jihad. Jihad is understood by many in the West as holy war. And interestingly enough, the term holy war is never used in the Quran. It's actually first used by Christians during the Crusade. So holy war is not a Quranic term. Jihad is a Quranic term. Jihad means struggle. And Muhammad says that the greater jihad, the one that you may end up being in an eternal struggle with, is the jihad with yourself. The jihad to do what is good. The jihad in the same chapter, chapter 2, verse 177, the jihad to believe in God, to help the poor and the needy, to liberate the oppressed, to pray, and to be steadfast in danger. This is the inner jihad that yes, all humans have to struggle with throughout our lives. I struggle with this. I do this kind of jihad as a Christian. To do what is right, to do what is good. That is the primary jihad. The lesser jihad is the jihad that's a failure, is the jihad that means sometimes you have to go to war. Sometimes you have to defend yourself, defend your religion, primarily defend your religion. This is what jihad means. Now, many in the West, I fear, are bearing false witness against Islam. When we talk about jihad as being this eternal struggle, this clash of civilizations, of this inherent struggle between Islam and the West, or Islam and Christianity, this is bearing false witness, because that's not what jihad is at all. Jihad is a struggle to do what is good. When there are times when you have to go to war, you stop going to war when others cease going to war, when others cease persecuting. So, jihad puts limits on war that are similar to just war theory in Christianity. So, that's what jihad is all about, doing good to others, and sometimes out of a necessity having to go to war. Now, back to this forgiveness thing. One of the interesting things that many Christians don't know about the Quran is that Jesus plays an important role in the Quran. One of the most important things about the Quran is this kind of last judgment that's going to happen in the end of days. And it goes over and over again about how humans need to take responsibility for our actions, because our actions have consequences that outlast even us, our physical bodies. And so Muhammad starts talking about a resurrection of the dead, a physical bodily resurrection. And in the last day, there's going to be a judgment. Now, who is the one who is going to be the judge? The Quran states that Jesus Christ is going to be the judge. Now, there are different roles between Christianity and Islam with the person of Jesus, but here the Quran says Jesus is going to be the one who will judge in the end. This is awesome. This is good news, because Jesus, and the Quran is consistent, says that the New Testament, it's a confirmation of what's going on in the New Testament. Jesus is the one who is all forgiving. Jesus is the one who says, love your enemies. Forgive 7 times, 77 times, which is this metaphorical number for always forgive. There's no one that I would want at the gates of heaven more than Jesus. The gate is wide open. The gate to heaven in the Quran is wide open. It's up to us to decide to walk through. It's up to us to decide if we need this dependence on God, this forgiveness, this mercy, this compassion that the Quran talks about over and over again. Do we need that? Do we rely on God for this? And the Quran is trying to get us to say, yes, we do, and accept that forgiveness. So, those are my thoughts on jihad, on the Quran, on Islam, on Jesus and Islam. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Bye.